You're listening to an Ono Media podcast.
Good morning, and thanks for joining me for Rise in Crime, your morning caffeine hit all about crime. I'm Mama Jules, and I've been waiting for the murder trial of Robert Tellez, who's accused of killing journalist Jeff Germain. I've been waiting for it to be completed before I bring you the entire story. And we now have a verdict, and spoiler alert, a sentence. But let's start with our victim first, 69-year-old Las Vegas Review-Journal reporter Jeff Germain. Now, Jeff had tackled the underbelly of Sin City in his storied career. He covered mobsters and murderers and crooked government officials and corrupt government agencies. And back in 2022, he took on a government office that had rumors circling about bullying and hostility in the workplace. His investigative work led him to report on Clark County Public Administrator Robert Tellez. Jeff authored several articles published in the Las Vegas Review-Journal that chronicled Robert creating a hostile work environment. He quoted employees who felt like their work environment was creating emotional stress, this due to favoritism and bullying. Now that favoritism, well, it stemmed from an alleged heightened relationship between Robert Tellez, the boss, and one of his staffers. Jeff claimed that he had received knowledge through secret videotapes that 45-year-old Roberta Lee Kennett and Robert were having a, quote, inappropriate relationship. Now, those secret recordings showed Robert and Roberta meeting up in the back seat of her Nissan Rogue in a dark parking garage. Roberta was supposed to be handling estates as part of her job and how they were addressed following the death of an estate owner. But employees or her coworkers said she was being given other, easier duties and that her job requirements were suffering. Now, I was kind of a little confused at what this public office does. Both of my parents have passed on, and we didn't use a public agency to handle the estate. We had a lawyer. But here's how it works in Clark County. The office has 8 full-time employees, 3 part-time support staffers, and then roughly 15 part-time investigators who spend most of their days in the field. When someone dies and there are no immediate family members to deal with the estate, this office takes possession of the property, and then investigators attempt to locate relatives so the property can be turned over to them. This explains why I didn't need the government to step in with the death of my parents. So this workplace animosity? Well, it led a supervisor in the office named Rita Reed to challenge Robert Tellez in the Democrat primary for Clark County Public Administrator. Okay, as you would expect, both Roberta and Robert, they've denied having that improper relationship, saying they were only close friends. And it's important to note, both of them are married. Robert even blamed the seasoned employees, so those who had been around for a long time, like Rita Reed, for exaggerating the extent of the relationship and also for mistreating him and Roberta. He cited the employees had filed complaints against him, and those complaints were, in his words, unsubstantiated. He said he considered Roberta a close confidant who he shared concerns about work life with, and he chose her because he knew she would understand the circumstances. He then said it was all an elaborate setup to dismantle his chances at a second term in office and increase the chances for Rita Reed to win. All right, now to be fair, Jeff did quote in those news articles some office workers who said they absolutely love working with Robert. Those workers explained the office was basically divided into 2 factions. There were the new hires that were hired by Robert, and they liked their jobs. And then there was the seasoned employees who had ties to former public administrator John Cahill. Okay, most of that faction, the seasoned employees one, they had worked with P.A. Cahill for 12-ish years. All right, so now we're going to go back to the race for public administrator. Robert now has a challenger, Rita Reed, and it has divided the office even more. And the former PA, John Cahill, well, he stepped it all up a notch by throwing his backing behind Rita. Along with supporting the opposing candidate of Robert, John was also quoted in the news articles as saying that he was concerned about the mental health of the staffers of that office. He even called the work environment abusive. Okay, so are you following me here? We've got the old boss blaming the new boss for an abusive work environment. We have a supervisor in the office challenging the boss for the political position. This is a bad deal all the way around. Now, as the articles written by Jeff piled up, more and more staffers began basically openly airing their grievances. They got detailed about the abuse, claiming Robert has a temper and he demeans holdover employees. Those previous employees, remember the seasoned ones? The news articles also said that he assigns them unnecessary work, that he has set unrealistic performance goals for those employees, and he won't respond to questions they have about their changing duties. And then they said he tries to dig up dirt on them. He also prohibits them from using cell phones at work, and he discourages them from socializing and gossiping in the office. So one worker, she even claimed she eats a bagged lunch in her car every day in order to not be seen by Robert socializing with the seasoned staffers. And then one staffer was quoted in a Jeff Germain article as saying she would rather have a colonoscopy every day than come to work and deal with Robert. Okay, you guys, I could go on and on, quote after quote about the work environment. Let's just leave it at this. Robert Tellez probably loathed Jeff Germain after the series of articles came out. Well, shortly after the publication, June 18th rolled around, and that was voting day for the Democrat primary. On the ballot, Rita Reed versus Robert Tellez, and Robert lost his re-election bid for Clark County Public Administrator. Now, you would think it would end here. Robert finishes out his term, Jeff moves on to another scandal in a city that is wrought with scandals, but these two did not bury the hatchet. Robert allegedly keeps causing havoc in his office, and that makes Jeff keep on digging. He submits public records requests for emails and text messages between Robert and 3 of his employees. And one of those employees? Well, it's Roberta, who he had the questionable relationship with. And wow, did this cause some heartburn. Then on the morning of September 2nd of 2022, surveillance footage shows someone wearing a wide straw hat, gloves, and a bright orange long sleeve shirt showing up at Jeff's home. Now, this person was driving a reddish maroon GMC Yukon Denali with chrome handles and a sunroof. The driver of the GMC, well, he sort of canvasses the neighborhood for some significant time. He's picked up on various recording devices. Then at about 11:15 that morning, the man in the orange shirt slips into the side yard of Jeff Germain's yard. Jeff emerges from his home, and words are exchanged between the two. Then Jeff is stabbed multiple times about the neck and chest. The man in the orange shirt leaves the area, spending only 2 minutes in the side yard. Now, the attack was brutal enough that DNA from the murderer was left behind under Jeff's fingernails. And because Jeff lived alone, his body was not discovered until the next day. Well, police immediately asked for the public's help in searching for the Denalis that matched the description that was found in the video footage. And then, several days after Jeff's murder, authorities showed up in the early morning hours at Robert Tellez's home. During the search of the home, a GMC Denali was towed from the house, as well as a second vehicle. Police also found a cut-up straw hat and shoes similar to the Nikes that were worn by the man in the video footage. Now, Robert was inside during part of this time being interviewed by police, and then after several hours, he was removed from the home on a stretcher. Police had noticed a wound to his finger, and they just assumed that wound had been received while stabbing Jeff. Well, Robert was later charged with first-degree murder, and because I know you're going to ask, was there cell phone data linking Robert to the brutal death? Murderers seem to love to take their phones along with them. But here's the deal. On that morning, Robert's cell phone does not leave his home. He did, however, receive a text from his wife at 10:30 saying, "Where are you?" And then just shortly after noon, his phone becomes active again, and it's traced to a Planet Fitness gym. All right, you know what happened next. We spend the next 2 years of legal maneuvering before Robert Tellez faced a jury of his peers and also the first-degree murder charge for Jeff's death. But this one's a little different. Robert took the stand in this trial, and he mostly gave a narrative. He wasn't asked many questions by his attorney because he's an attorney himself, and he had prepared notes that he referred to often during the testimony. Robert told jurors that he did in fact have a cut on his finger, but it was not the result of stabbing Jeff. He claimed he was making lunch for his daughter and he cut his finger on a knife. He also said he washed all 3 of his cars just 1 day after cutting his hand, and he explained to jurors if the injury was serious, he would not have been able to do that. He also testified that his car did look like the one in the surveillance footage, except the rims aren't exact and so it couldn't be him. He also really couldn't explain how his DNA ended up under Jeff's fingernails. He did, however, explain that he felt he had been set up for the murder, that potentially a real estate company was dissatisfied with his investigation into their reselling of properties, and therefore, if he was jailed, then he couldn't continue his investigation into that real estate company. He theorized they must have done the killing and planted his DNA. He said he was at home during the murder and that when his wife reached out to find him, he had actually gone for a walk and left his phone at home. He testified that the straw hat and shoes that were found at his home did look like the ones worn by the man in the video footage, but he assured jurors they were not the same items. When cross-examined, he said the articles by Jeff were, quote, a bummer, but that he never felt threatened by Jeff and that he did not hate him. Well, the state presented texts to Robert during his testimony that Robert had sent to one of his employees, where he wrote that he was worried Jeff was tanking his current career and also any future chances at employment. The state also noted that Jeff was murdered just 1 day after he had made that public records request for those texts and emails. Now, Robert, in his final plea to jurors, said he did not know where Jeff lived, and he would not know how to input an address he doesn't even have knowledge of into GPS. Okay, you guys, I'm going to interject here. This is my thought if I was a juror. Robert works in a public system that addresses estates. I'm sure he has the capacity to look up people's addresses. Well, the jury didn't buy his testimony, and Robert was found guilty of first-degree murder. The 7 women and 5 men spent 12 hours deliberating the 8 days of testimony. The same jury then sentenced him to life in prison with the possibility of parole after 20 years served. And, true to someone who would take the stand and give testimony like a lawyer, Robert also granted an interview to KSNV just days after being found guilty. Here, I'll let you listen to the first couple of minutes of the 18-minute interview.
But
no, of course.
Why did you agree to do this interview with us today?
Well, again, I understand that folks had a lot of questions, I'm sure, still, after the trial. So I wanted to be sure to answer those questions. I think especially a lot of folks are wondering, if I'm innocent or, if I still maintain my innocence. And yes, I am innocent, despite the verdict.
So we understood yesterday.
It's true, but it was not out of any concern that I could see. So directly after the verdict came, and I had prepared my family, we talked about it, and I said, if I believe I proved my innocence to the jury, but if for some reason things don't go the way we hoped, don't worry. I've got, I'm working on appeals, and I believe I'll be out in maybe 4 or 5 years, 3, 4, 5 years. So don't worry, we're going to be okay. And I conveyed that to the folks that were returning me to my cell. And despite that, they decided I needed to go into a suicide watch. The psychiatrist had come and seen me, and she said that, she had no concern for me and any suicide risk or anything. Yet still they decided to throw me into that room. And it's a room where they strip you down naked. It's a cold room. It's windowless. The lights are on 24 hours a day. And they give you a cargo blanket.
All right, I guess we'll see if Robert does, in fact, get out on appeal in 4 or 5 years, like he predicts. Let's remember Jeff. who worked in journalism for 40 years in the Las Vegas area. His investigative work at 2 different newspapers led to reforms and policy changes in the areas that he tackled. He was known for his tenacity, which made for brilliant reporting, but also most likely led to his murder. One situation he tackled was a deadly apartment fire. Jeff did a deep dive into city inspections, and his reporting led to tighter expectations of landlords. In the sentencing portion of his trial, his brother and sisters took the stand, and they described Jeff as someone dedicated to his nieces and nephew. They also applauded his career and work in Las Vegas. His brother said Jeff was the older brother he could always count on. And they laughed at his quirky qualities, like his ultra-clean house. I hope they feel justice has been served in this case. And now to this story out of Colton, California that involves a missing couple and their little white dog and a nudist colony. Colton, California is about 50 miles east of downtown Los Angeles, and nestled in the hills of Colton is a nudist community known as Olive Dell Ranch RV Park. Now, the website for the RV park is very mindful of the reactions that one might have about a nudist park. On the landing page, the nudity is only mentioned once in a heading over details about the park. Now, those details don't mention the nudity at all, but if you do click the Learn More tab, you can read the following. Olive Dell Ranch is Southern California's favorite nudist resort for families and couples. Located in Colton, California, just a few miles from San Bernardino and Riverside, Olive Dell's central location is close to many of Southern California's main tourist attractions. It's the ideal spot to enjoy the nudist/naturist lifestyle, whether visiting for the day or an overnight stay. All right, next to the description is a picture of a naked woman floating in one of the park pools. Her inflatable discreetly covers some delicate areas. Well, upcoming events include bingo, karaoke, an acoustic concert, and a trailer dance. I'm not sure what that is. Well, this suspected murder story broke open on Thursday when police descended on the Olive Dell Ranch trying to conduct a missing persons case involving 73-year-old Stephanie Menard and her husband, 79-year-old Daniel Menard. The couple hadn't been seen since the previous Sunday, and neighbors in the Olive Dell Ranch community were becoming a little worried. When police entered the home of Stephanie and Daniel, they found Stephanie's purse on the counter and both of their cell phones as well. Their car was located just down the street and it was unlocked. But they didn't find the couple or their small Shih Tzu named Cuddles. Now, as we're all too familiar with, adults can go missing if they want to. But there were physical circumstances here that made an intended disappearance unlikely. Daniel's diabetic, and he also suffers from dementia. And Stephanie, well, she has some difficulty with mobility, usually walking with a cane. So these two setting out on a new adventure or a new lifestyle is probably not in the cards. Well, the search did have a noteworthy event. During the visit, the police received a phone-in tip that a man involved in the disappearance of the Menards was living in the RV park. Police locked down the park and they obtained a search warrant for 62-year-old Royce Sparks' home, which is adjacent to the property that is owned by the Menards. Authorities used a battering ram to crush through the door and then used remote-controlled machines, including a drone and an assault vehicle, to search the place. Aerial footage from KTLA showed a police vehicle with an arm aggressively digging through the suspect's home. It nearly knocked over the deck in the process. And due to the damage of the home, police did not immediately enter. Then on Friday morning, Redlands police announced they had arrested Royce late Thursday and charged him with murder. He is currently being housed at the West Valley Detention Center. CNN reported that he was found under the house and that he surrendered voluntarily after some heated and lengthy negotiations. Police also told CNN that they believe the bodies of Stephanie and Daniel are located on the home site. Okay, this is breaking news, and as I recorded this podcast, the bodies had yet to be located. A motive has yet to be revealed, but Royce is not eligible for bail, and he will make his first court appearance tomorrow. Tammy Wilkerson, a neighbor to both the Menards and Royce, told KABC TV that the Menards are very sweet people and that neither of them had a mean bone in their bodies. She followed that up with her confusion about why Royce would want to hurt them. I have a feeling I'll be reporting more about this case as details emerge. All right, let's tell you the breaking news out of Idaho Springs, Colorado. I know that's a little confusing, but this is the name of the city in Colorado. Idaho Springs is about 30 miles west of Denver, and it's kind of located in a mountain valley. The population is almost 1,800 people. It's pretty safe to bet everyone knows everyone in this small town of Idaho Springs. And this was true for 57-year-old Daniel Peavy. He's a Doberman dog breeder whose Facebook page just made me smile. I love dogs. My little dog is a Chiweenie. You guys have seen her a few times, and she weighs about 5 pounds. And of course, if you're a fan of Murder with My Husband, I get to be grandma to Sweet Daisy. Well, Paul clearly loves dogs as well. His page is full of memes about dogs, along with other funny material. You guys, it's actually the thing I love about social media, a place where we can help each other laugh just a little bit. And it sounds like Paul helped people be happy in the real world, too. A couple of nights a week, Paul would visit the Pix Axe Pizza restaurant in Idaho Springs, which is owned by Bruce Boynton. Bruce told 9 News that he absolutely knew something was wrong when Paul hadn't shown up to shoot the breeze with the locals. Another friend had tried to reach Paul, and he had had no luck either. Bruce reported to the police that he thought something was wrong on August 21st. And according to his interview with 9 News, police didn't act, or at least didn't really take it seriously. That's when Bruce gathered a few men and they headed to Paul's property last week. When they arrived, the men broke the lock to the exterior gate and gained access to the property. What they found sent alarm bells blaring. Paul's 10 Doberman puppies were missing. His equipment was missing, along with basically anything that had value. Doors were left wide open to cages and buildings. The place had been ransacked. But even more concerning was the eerie silence. Bruce reported back to police what he had found or not found in this case. And on Thursday morning, Clear Creek County Sheriff Matthew Harris dispatched a deputy, and he reported that he found nothing but good old Bruce. We all need friends like Bruce in our life because he took matters into his own hands, and he organized a search party. More than 40 community members got together and they headed to Paul's property to grid pattern search for any clues, anything that would help them find their missing friend. And you guys, this is a task. His website says he raises the Dobermans on 110 acres, but it only took a few minutes. That's when the group found Paul's body haphazardly covered with sticks and rocks and debris. Bruce told 9 News his body was in a, quote, horrible state. The searchers knew it was Paul by his distinctive tattoos, but the coroner has yet to determine his cause of death when I took this podcast to recording. However, police did say it seems suspicious. Now, the police have asked that anyone who was scheduled to buy one of the 10 puppies from Paul, well, they want them to reach out to the police. Authorities believe that might be the reason for Paul's death, and that the 10 puppies will be sold elsewhere, maybe on Facebook or another site. One of those buyers has worked with law enforcement since the story broke. Bryce and his wife were scheduled to buy a puppy from Paul. The couple had been to Paul's home and picked out their puppy on August 4th. They had even had a name chosen for this puppy. They were going to call him Cigar. The couple's 12-year-old Doberman had died 1 month previous, and after researching Paul and his ethics, they had chosen to purchase their new puppy for $4,000 from Paul. Bryce said Paul had been very responsive during the buying process, but when he sent Paul a text the day before he was supposed to pick up little Cigar, Paul did not respond. Then Bryce sent a second text, and then a third. All were left unread. Then he left a voicemail, and finally, he decided to Google Paul's name. That's when he found the breaking news about Paul's death. Bryce told Denver 7 that he would like to get Cigar back and shower him with love, but more importantly, He is invested in helping authorities find the person who murdered Paul. Paul's friend Bruce told 9 News that although he was grateful that they found Paul, he was critical of the investigation. He said the following: "It should not have been us. The authorities should have listened to us from the very beginning and acted on it, but they did not. They're on our side now, but we had to prove what we'd been telling them for days." Now, the authorities do say that all of the puppies were microchipped. Therefore, they're asking anyone in the Denver area that has purchased a Doberman in the last couple of weeks to check for the microchip and also to contact police. They're also asking that anyone who purchased a puppy from Elite European Dobermans, that's Paul's company, well, they want them to contact the sheriff's office, even if, the last few months you've purchased one. I'm guessing they're hoping that a dog that was sold previously, that the new owners could maybe help them network to people who might have asked questions about where they got the puppy from, maybe generate some new leads that way. As I searched Paul's name, tribute after tribute popped up, referencing his big laugh and his wide smile. Through my searching, I could see that Paul has at least one son. And he also didn't just breed the dogs for a business, because I know that raises some concerns for people. But it does seem he truly loves dogs. He would take his trained dogs to senior centers to bring comfort to the residents. And he's also CPR certified for dogs. He did volunteer at a local shelter walking dogs that weren't his. I'll let you know as more details emerge about this case. All right, that's your Monday episode of Rise in Crime. Thanks for joining me here on this podcast and YouTube broadcast. I love being a part of your day. I get emails from you guys or direct messages saying how it's become part of your regular day on Monday and Thursdays. I truly appreciate you being here with me. If that is you, would you please share this show with a friend? And of course, a 5-star review and a positive comment always helps everything grow. Please like and follow us on all of our social media accounts here at Oh No Media. That's Murder with My Husband, Into the Dark, and of course, Rise in Crime. You can join me again on Thursday for more morning crime news. I'm Mama Jules, and keep safe out there.